Welcome back to another reading and collecting of Shattered Salvation. The Tiger and Tiger Supervisor. Want to listen to these live? It's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And today we are doing chapter. All right, this is. The lobby was busy, and Victor had to push his way out of people. Hadn't been smart enough to install even a basic identity. They were screaming at the search. Haggard. He still managed to wave to Victor. Returned to forced a smile. Everyone here, she was the only one who ever looked like she was. The entrance to the lock when he put his hand on the handle, and it was slow, as he did every day, and like each time, the fear that today it would lock started like, and he pulled it. So Captain Sonora hadn't carried through on this threat. None of screams and arguments were the lively discussion. Two officers once closed, talking about cases, gossip, laughing at a joke or a story. What a crook done to capture. Often with the joke in it. Except for a circle of three desks around Victor, approached, eyed. They eyed him, and some sneered. He ignored. He hadn't done anything wrong. Why hasn't it fired him yet? Hawk whispered. It had taken him a couple of years, but he realized there was nothing. He hadn't done anything wrong. After a decade, hung up on it, able to change their mind. Of course, the fact that Captain Sinor threatened to lock him out of this help anyone forget that area. He entered the stairs all the way to his desk. His corner, the large. Sat, careful. His chair was old and his bulk was more than it should be. Broke it. Sure, he'd get a replacement. He looked the room over as his terminal registered arrival and gave him same disdainful look. And still, all they could see was the one they held responsible for the blemish. Like it was his fault that lone criminal had managed to circumvent the prison security and get into the system. His fault that he'd managed to make his escape by destroying a power station. Yes, he'd been the one talking to him. Yes, it had been his data pad, and that was how he'd accessed the system. But any detective would have had it. Would have one. But someone had seen him and the criminal in the same interrogation room. I'd asked to speak directly. Therefore, Victor, for everything that had happened afterward. For the higher ups coming down on all of them for lack of security. For the punitive measures they'd all had to injures included. And the timing couldn't have been worse. It had been starting up again. Cases were making their way. Oh wait. Cases were making it to his desk. He was an actual detective, not just name anymore. He didn't care. The dealt were for stuff, things only the newest rookies dealt with. The sign that he was finally back on track. Now, wasn't even allowed to look at active. The only files he saw were the closed ones needing to be filed. He'd been relegated to doing secretarial work. He'd hoped that when the captain retired 5 years ago, things would improve. Captain would mean one person in authority that didn't hold him responsible for every problem with the precinct. That person on his side, he'd hoped ever so slowly, attitude change. But not only had the promotion come within the precinct, Casey Sinner, his loudest critic, the man who'd made it his mission to make Victor's life miserable, became his captain. Captain didn't make his first act fire Victor was that he found out he didn't have the power. So his captain did everything he could to get Victor to quit. Victor tried transfer. Those were the only times Captain Sinner smiled at him, saying that Victor would ever be able to let go. The first time this had happened, years before this sentence, he told himself he would tough it out. He would prove he was better than that one mistake. He'd let himself be used by a criminal in access to the database. Believed that he deserved the second, and he was going to fight for it. During that attack, he lost more than 80% of the data as the criminal corrupted it to hide what he was after. And that had made the punishment warranted. Victor had deserved the suspension, but he didn't lie about. What he didn't lie about. He took that one subjective year and tried to find the criminal. How hard could it be? By then, he knew the criminal far too well. It turned out Victor knew nothing about it, not even his name. Every lead it followed based on some information he dropped, the mentioned nowhere. He did find a name eventually, but all that gave him was a list of possibilities. And with his suspension, and what else could he do? Sitting behind him, back to work, and endured the career stall was in as he hadn't let himself go. He stuck to his exercise regimen because he knew without a doubt it was only a matter of time until it blew over. Back to work. The problem with people, as long-lived as they were, was that a matter of time turned out to be years. Still, he'd injured. As certain as he'd been that it was a matter of time, he returned to work after. He was equally certain that this time a shadow fell over him. We have a breaking at the Granham storage facility. I need you to investigate it. Victor looked at Captain's chip for him while reading his data pad. Victor looked at it and hit him. He reached for it only to have it yanked away. Captain Sinner was eyeing him. Not Zolan? He looked around. Damn it, Zolan! Where are you? How come you didn't tell me you moved desk? Sorry, Captain, the woman yelled back. Got to tell you. Ran to grab the chip, smirked at Victor, and back to her. Back and taking it. Been at this desk for the last 9 years. But what would that help? Captain Sinner squinted at him. Are you? Remember hiring a secretary. That is you. I get it. Growled before you. I have no business being here. All I do is bring shame to the department. I'm not even good enough to lick your boots. Out of your fun. Get back to work now. Right, he replied, stretching. Remember you now. The guy who slept his way into a filing position. Didn't before Sinner had even joined the paid for that one. Paid for falling in love with Simon and not realizing it had been an act on his part. At least you kept the cheese. Grind his teeth to keep saying anything. Sinner would just use that as an excuse for others. And he'd promised himself he was never making it that easy. Is there anything else? Victor said through. Not. Really should leave, you know. No one wants you here. Write it. Transfer. Give you a chance to in another. So, well, and you make such a pretty secretary. Now, How about you get me a coffee? Get it yourself. I'm not yours. Sounds like insubordination. That's the sound of me trying to do my job. Waited for the captain's decision. Maybe he'd be suspended again. Shadow laughed, but he moved a few files to the closed case server. Maybe find a job elsewhere. No matter where in the universe you file here, waiting to sink in. Sinner would make sure of that. Their requirements were even more stringent than private security, but that was barely a step removed from being a mercenary, which was the same as being a criminal. He was going to tough this one out too. Sinner was ambitious. Get promoted away. Maybe then Victor would get lucky and captain who didn't know. Of course, if the end of the If the end of the incessant attempt at the data vault hadn't made the captain mellow out, they'd put that on his head too, probably because they'd after. So that had to be that had to be. But then, if any of them knew that the attacks had actually been his known it at that, he probably wouldn't body left. Probably wouldn't be a body left of him. It was pure luck on his part that he even knew why the attack had stopped, therefore why they had been happening. It had been on the 25th anniversary of Simon vanishing. To look at the list of location compiled, but it was gone. No trace of who had taken it, gaping hole where the data should have been. Panicked, almost told the captain, realized how stupid that would be. Instead, he bribed one of the techs and all evidence it was there and decided to forget about it. Minutes, hours, piled up. On a good day, he fell in a sort of trance, collating the files and moving without being. Those days could pass in an instant. Today, it wasn't. His eyes hurt. His had trouble reading the file number. He looked at the time on his screen, but not even 2 hours had passed since this day ever end. As he went back to filing, he noticed a blinking icon. He looked around. If this trick one of them was playing on him, they'd be looking at him, waiting for his reaction. Work. And now that he thought about it, about the icon, he activated it and it appeared on the screen. Two people walking along the corridor. It was human. The other, almost 50 years later, and the alien still caused his heart to flutter. He reached for the screen, but that wasn't Simon. There had never been his name. Now you remember the icon. A surveillance program he'd bought and had inserted it with. Okay, Tristan made the mistake of coming back here. He studied the image. The Somalian was with strangers. Their heads were inclined toward each other. He requested the port security footage and technically was still a detective, got it. He couldn't get anything the landing bay due to privacy laws, but the corridors were public space and had multiple cameras. Then the human's image through recognition didn't feel. Tristan was a criminal with a higher caliber. Any associates of his would also be a criminal, plus this on. Now that didn't feel right either. There was something about the way their head moved as his head moved as he spoke that felt so familiar, like he was. He dug in his data pad, searched through it, kept a picture, knew he had wanted to remember that the man. Promised himself that if he ever found him, he would make him pay for his career. Looked at them both, identical, but still, it was the scar on him. Asshole who'd attacked the precinct, who put him on this desk. There he was. Tristan. Victor had known Tristan was still out there, right one after the other. He might have given up his hunt for him, but kept a near to. He'd heard stories, rumors. He was dead. He'd infiltrated Space Go with a partner. He dismissed that one out of a hand. Tristan didn't have partners. And people. He brought up a feed from the camera and watched them walk together. There was something there in Tristan was a great enough actor. He couldn't trust what he saw, but the human. What were the odds? The man who had attacked precinct was not a pawn. And a deeper realization hit him. The man had stolen something from the precinct, but he clearly remembered it saying, I just copied some yours. Precinct. His. The bastard had stolen his lust. And now, there he was, walking with Tristan as if they were friends. Victor felt a stab of jealousy like he'd never felt before. That was what he'd wanted. And because of his list, that guy had gotten it. Anger. What did that guy have that Tristan didn't? Why had he been abandoned? There, the Saratoga claimed still had him. He almost sent an alert to check the cell. He told the file, even with biometric identifier and images, were here within his jurisdiction. If he caught Tristan, brought him to justice, brought them both of if he brought him both of them, he requested a tag on their shuttle from where they were, capture them, get his career back. He was finally going to get answers. This of Shattered. If you are enjoying this, please a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is, yep, subscribe and hit the bell. Want to read the book as well as the other in the series? They are available on all. If you want to support me? That's on my Patreon, or you can also get X access. Basically, if you listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the chat.